We are here on the site of a Mancunian institution. The Britons Protection pub, just behind me, has been on this site since 1806. It has borne witness to many of Manchester's major historic events. The Peterloo Massacre was on this site. It's witnessed the birth of the suffragette movement, and the legendary Hacienda nightclub was a matter of streets away. In fact, it is said that Friedrich Engels, New Order, and Anthony Wilson were all regulars in this pub. But now it is under threat. The pub's owners, brewery company Star Pubs and Bars, a subsidiary of Heineken UK, are allegedly opting not to renew the lease of the current owners. The owners say this will permanently change the face of the pub. We came down to speak to them, to ask them about this pressing story. I'm here with Alan Hudd, the landlord of the Britons Protection, to ask him some questions about the situation. So Alan, could you tell us a little bit about the history of the pub?
So it's been here since 1806. It was originally, there's a couple of stories, but the one that we kind of know best was that it was part of a recruitment drive for the army way back when, 200 years ago. And then it became kind of synonymous in the city for its role that it played throughout the Peterloo Massacre, which happened just at the steps of the GMEX Centre. Effectively, when they sent the sabre-drawn guards into the crowds to disperse them, a lot of them were pushed back in the walls of the protection and kept safe, and that's why it kind of cemented that name. We've got pictures in the hallway that are kind of all paintings of what happened on that day. However, there's a few people I'm quite sure, as legendary as they are, were not there. Sir Eric Cantona being one of them, who's in the picture just behind you. So a few people were kind of retrofitted into those paintings. But we still get people coming in today. We're on a Manchester tour guide thing at the minute where people have been coming in for the last few weeks, and they're doing Manchester tour quizzes, and it's all about the reform. So we've been getting people in every day who, it's a beautiful pub, not been here for years, and it's getting a lot busier now. But we're 214 years, nearly 215 years old. It's been a local watering hole for people and an institution for Manchester.
It's very much true. It seems as if it's really played a role in the city. There's a lot of, as you say, famous people have come and used it as a base.
Oh yeah, we've had all sorts. A lot of Manchester bands started here. Badly Drawn Boy did one of his first gigs upstairs in our rooms. The Cortinas. George Ezra signed his record contract in the room just at the back of us here, and that was quite funny because I got a call from Sony saying, "Oh, we've got a guy who wants to pitch." So yeah, cool. And I remember he did the pitch in the back, and I had this song just playing in my head, and it was stuck there for days. And then every time I turned the TV on, there was a song playing. I was like, why do I know that song? And it was his first hit, and I was just like, what? But then he came back about 8 months later when he did Park Life, and his manager phoned me up. He was like, "It's his birthday. We've done Park Life. Can you open up late?" And I was like, "Yeah, come on down." And his 21st birthday in the back room again.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, the people who come here, 9 times out of 10, you wouldn't even know they were celebrities because they just kind of come in and blend in with the crowd. We had Vivienne Westwood did a gig or a show, a fashion show at the Bridgewater. Comes in the bar, orders a drink. I'm serving her, and these women are going absolutely crazy. I'm like, what? Like, you just served Vivienne Westwood, and I'm like, who? But again, dead nice, lovely lady, buys a drink, sits down. We have it all the time. It's just one of them places where they seem to feel they can just come in and just relax and not have to worry about gate crashes or crowds or anything like that. So it's great.
Absolutely. So yeah, a real Manchester institution. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the dispute then.
So effectively, in 2017, 2018, there was something came out for pubs called the MRO process, and what that meant was that effectively years before, if you wanted to get a pub, you were tied into a brewery. That's just how it was. What that did was that you paid your brewery rent, so you rented the building and leased it off them, and you also bought all your beer from them. Unfortunately for publicans, the beer pricing was, say, double what you'd buy directly. So after a while, you kind of go, this doesn't make much sense. So MRO process basically came out stating that you could move away from your brewery, be it paying a load of money to do so, but the idea was that you could then buy your beer from anybody you see fit. So if you were tied, for example, to, say, Robinson's, but their beer wasn't the best fit for your venue, you could pay your way out of that contract effectively. Your rent would increase, but then you could buy your beer from anyone, so you could stock different products from different breweries as opposed to being tied into one. We opted to do that. It cost around £200,000 to do that, and unfortunately it's not a case of there's your deal, pay it back when you've got the money. If you want to do it, you've got to find the money and pay it straight away. So it puts you in a bit of a negative place to start with, but the idea is after, say, 4 or 5 years, you should be on a balance where what you're saving in paying for beer should be kind of swinging in a publican's favour. We wanted to work with a lot more local breweries, but at the time, because we were with Punch Tavern, we couldn't. We can only buy from them. So we opted to go MRO, We were successful. I think we were one of the first pubs in Manchester to be successful doing it. What that meant was our rent then doubled, and we could then buy a beer from anybody. We went from having 3 cast lines on to 8, which are all local. We only work with local breweries now, and they're all within a 25-mile radius. So everything on the pumps is locally sourced. We do have beers from further afield, but they're bought through the local breweries, which again keeps them running and helps their costs. It's just a matter of keeping the local beers alive. You know, if you're all tied into big breweries, which will buy beer a lot cheaper from your bigger brewers, your smaller breweries are never going to get a look in, and eventually they'll end up closing down. So the whole point of being able to keep these places alive and keep Manchester as it should be and vibrant is going to die if we don't do these kind of things. So we did that. On the basis of that, we actually tied a deal with Heineken to be our keg distributor. So all our keg lines, lager, ciders, we did a separate deal with Heineken. Unknown to us, Punch Taverns didn't want to sit down and discuss kind of keeping us on board, and we thought it was a little bit strange. It turned out that at the time, a company called Star Pubs and Bars, subsequently owned by Heineken, was taking over Punch Taverns, so they were buying them out. So we, unknown to us, did a deal separately for our keg beers with Heineken, and effectively they also became our landlord by proxy, which was fine. We should technically then been a flagship for Heineken, because it should have been a case of, with the MRO, it's always been a little bit kind of us and them. So you'll have, should have been effectively where they could say, actually, the MRO works quite well regardless of if you stay with a pub or a pub chain or not, because we've got one here in Manchester that went free of tie, tied in with us either way on a free trade deal, and it works for both parties. Seemed to work for a few years, and then all of a sudden, post-COVID, we're being told that they want to take it back. After the fact that we paid them nearly £200,000 in back rent. So we during COVID we amassed about £178,000 in back rent, because again, when you go free of tie, they don't tell you things like, as a brewery, if you're a tenant in a pub, they froze all the rents through COVID because you couldn't operate, you were shut. We were under the idea that we had the same deal, and then they said, oh no, you're free trade, you're effectively on your own, you've still got to pay your rent. When we opened up again, it was, oh, you owe us £180,000. The thing is, a lot of brewers, a lot of pubs wouldn't have had that kind of money to just pay that outright. And the thing is, if you don't pay your rent, you're in breach of your lease, which means you could lose your pub. My business partners took out money and paid that rent off, and in that same week, we then got a Section 25 eviction notice, which was basically them saying they wanted to take the pub back to run it themselves. They've not wanted to run it for over 10 years. The lease that we've had has worked quite well for 10 years. Now all of a sudden, they want to run it.
Could you tell us a little bit more? I mean, you've kind of talked about how things would change under the new...
Well, like I say, effectively, it would be a Heineken-run establishment, but because they don't have the angle to stock what they need to stock to keep people coming in here, you're then just going to be relying on footfall. The thing is, our footfall is mainly people outside of Manchester, i.e. people who are travelling from other countries, and the first thing they come in and ask for is, what have you got that's local? If we haven't got anything local, or what we have locally is not fantastic, and I'm not knocking the breweries they use, but then they haven't got the choice and the quality that these smaller breweries work with. So if they come in and ask for it, well, we don't do local beers anymore. Well, you've got 3 pubs on the vicinity that do local beers, so they're going to go there. If you come in and you've been drinking here for X amount of years coming in for the whiskies, and you come in one day and these shelves are empty and the whiskey's not there anymore, you're going to go to the northern quarter where the nearest whiskey bar is. So you're not going to come here for that. So then this pub is going to end up being a general footfall place, which it can't survive on footfall alone. It never has been able to.
So it seems as if, yes, that's very much, it's about the face of the institution, about preserving the face of the institution.
Yeah, I mean, this pub, as we said before, is steeped in heritage from Manchester. And the thing is, if you come in as a brewery, for example, I'm not saying it was the case, but if I was Heineken, something like our toilets are 200 years old. You know, they're old style toilets. Would that fit in a Heineken model pub where they're a little bit old, they're occasionally on the smelly side because they're 200 years old and the plumbing and whatnot is all 200 years old? Probably not. So then would they rip those toilets out so it fits and is nice, new and shiny? Very possibly. But then that wouldn't fit what this pub's about. You know, the tiling, things like that. All these things that should be preserved are not necessarily kept, and you've got to look in the sense of how far would Heineken take it. And for me personally, what upsets me is that if they said to me, We want to take it back because we want to keep that heritage and make sure that heritage stays and never gets ruined. But, you know, you're not making money or X, Y, Z, or the place is being run into the ground. I go, fair enough. But when we've run it for 10 years quite successfully and kept it as a Manchester institution, all of a sudden they want it back, and it's not for the reasons they're saying. When they say they want to run it themselves, it's not actually going to be run by Heineken. It'll be run by whoever this new franchisee is, because their Just Add Talent model is exactly that. It's a franchise scheme. So nobody would actually be working directly for Heineken. Mm. So how they can say, oh, we want to take it back and run it ourselves, kind of baffles me, because they're not actually running anything. What's happening there is the new franchisee is 100% tied into their products. So they're not running anything, but they get kind of both sides of the cake. They'll have the rent and they'll have all the money from the beer ordering. Mm. You know, we've spoke to them and said, let's look at retying back in, for example. Let's look at renegotiating a deal and make this place a flagship, you know, a Heineken flagship for Manchester. So far we've had no discussion. Now we are in the middle of taking them to court, so that could be why we've had no discussion. That's been a nice, costly adventure so far. But it's like, for me, I have people who come drinking here that have been drinking here for 50, 60, 70 years. We have a group of gentlemen who come here the last Thursday of every month. Do I make money off them? No. But they've been coming here, and it's the one time they get out together as a group of friends in their 70s and 80s that they've been doing it every month for years. Again, would Heineken have them coming in and foot the cost of the electricity, the gas, the rooms, when they're not making any money off them drinks-wise? I don't know. I can assume, but I don't mind, because we have people who've been coming here for years. Could I do this model elsewhere? Yes. Could I move what the whiskies and the cask ale are about into another venue of similar ilk? Yes. But I don't want to. The problem is, these pubs are Manchester heritage institutions, and if they start getting lost, that's all that happens, like a domino effect. You lose one, then another, and the next thing you know, there's all apartments, nowhere to go and enjoy this heritage anymore. You know, pubs there's apparently something like at least one pub a day getting taken down and destroyed. Well, if that continues that way, you're going to have nothing but cocktail bars and no heritage at all. So in 10 years' time, what people know of Manchester will be a completely different scene. Now, I'm not adverse to change or to development. That's going to happen either way. But why does it have to happen to destroy heritage sites like our own? From a student point of view, come here and drink. Come down, buy drinks, enjoy the venue.
Sure, they can manage that.
Yeah,
I'm sure they can manage.
You know, we've got QR codes on the back bar which everyone can take to sign a petition online. It's also on change.org. If you search the Britons Protection name, it comes up on there. But when we get to court, the more people who've signed that petition gives us more clout with the judge to say, look, it isn't just me trying to save my job. The local community doesn't want this to change. But the thing is, with pubs especially, not just ours, you have to use them. People need to go to pubs, you need to enjoy them, you need to drink, you don't have to spend loads of money. Come and buy one drink. For each person, if every person passed and bought one drink, it's enough to keep pubs going. Because like I say, if people stop using them, then they become just derelict buildings that are no longer in the face of Manchester.
And that would be obviously a real tragedy with the amount of history that we've got.
So come down, have a beer.